Welcome back, everyone, to Flight Path. We are so excited you are here. We've got a great episode for you today, and in a pretty cool milestone, it's the first episode of 2025 where we've got the kind of OG gang back together. We've got Molly, we've got Brad, we've got me, and as kind of quick reminders, if this is your first episode, Brad's our head of design, Molly's our head of product, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Tern, and this is the place that you can get the updates on everything that Tern has shipped this week, what is coming up. And so if you're thinking about how can I best leverage technology to grow your travel business, we think this is the podcast for you. We've got all kinds of fun things to talk about today. We've got updates to the agency product. We've got a big webinar next week. We've got all kinds of cool things. But I think we just have to take a minute and celebrate that the gang is back together. Brad, you just got back from a pretty epic trip. Why don't you tell the people about that?
Yeah, I am still incredibly jet lagged. I woke up at like 3 a.m. the last couple nights. So that's been fun. Was in Thailand for like 10 days, getting there before the White Lotus surge that will be happening when everyone starts watching that and realizes they need to go to Thailand. But yeah, we spent a few days in Bangkok and then at an incredible resort in Koh Samui, which is an island, I don't know, off the coast. It was gorgeous. It was so hot. I'm so glad to be back in not 90, 100 degree weather, things like that. And I was telling Molly yesterday, like, I think I'm becoming a resort person, which I don't know what that says, but
wow.
normally an itinerary for Jack and I is like, see things, do things, hiking, like we're going out. And we stayed at a resort which was like pretty remote and just like spent time at the beach we had a pool in our attached to our villa, kind of our own little private space, and it was just incredible. And it was actually a vacation I came back from feeling relaxed instead of feeling like I need a vacation from my vacation. So super cool.
Wow.
And
That sounds just so glorious. Like the beach time, the private pool, and I'm glad you're feeling restored besides the jet lag. How long did it take you to just get when you got to Thailand?
just about the end of the trip. And yeah, it was okay, actually. It wasn't terrible. I think it's like such a difference that for the most part, your body is like, I don't even know what to do with this. It's like 12 hours. So
Just
yeah.
total shock. Yeah. That is fair. And Molly, how are you feeling? Last episode, you're fighting off a little bit of that cold, but you back at it this week, or how are you?
Back in action, feeling so good to be healthy. I will say, okay, Brad, you'll appreciate this. So Brad and I are both really big fans of the fantasy series Way of Kings, and I feel like I'm Taravangian, where depending on how well Theo, my newborn, sleeps, I'm either smart or dumb each day, and I don't know how I'll wake up each day. So here, I'm on a dumb day right now, but like I've been having more smart days lately, which is really nice. So I'm not sure if any listeners will get that reference, but it's a pretty apt analogy.
It's a positive trend, right? There's still highs and lows, but it's a positive trend. That's good.
Exactly.
Oh, I thought you were just about Molly, how we are both not sleeping well, and so we've had a few meetings where we just kind of giggle at each other, and we're like, "Oh, okay, we're alive, we're here, we're trying."
We're playing hurt a little bit, but we're happy to all be back together.
We got the gang back together. It is good to have you back, Brad. Molly, glad that you're feeling better. People may be noticing it's like, kind of a different background, and this will just be the theme of March for me because it's not quite March, but last day in February, by the way, happy last day of February. March is just gonna be crazy travel month, and we kind of kicked that off this week. Being in San Francisco and in Los Angeles, we were kind of visiting a couple vendors. Actually, as we've talked about on this podcast, the group funds project, some of the different financial features. And so we were actually meeting with some of the executive teams at those partners in San Francisco. And then Brian, Katie, and I, as co-founders, kind of came down to the Upfront Summit, which is a kind of big technology conference that's hosted in Los Angeles. And it's this is our third year that we've come as kind of a team, and it's just a fun opportunity to zoom out and kind of see the patterns more broadly in technology. But it's also just kind of got this reputation of bringing like just the craziest set of speakers. Like it opened up with Prince Harry talking about like how he's moving into like venture capital, and like that was just so fascinating watching him handle the questions from Mark Schuster and being like, you could tell every question was through the lens of how is this what I say going to end up in a tabloid And so it's just like a fascinating like media training like example, but it was really cool hearing his story and seeing him speak. But then we saw leaders in kind of Silicon Valley and technology. We saw people who are kind of really thinking about innovative ways to help the LA fire victims. Like, it was a really cool day. But that's why my background is a little bit more dull today. I am coming to you from a Delta lounge with a phone booth where I've kind of wedged myself into this little booth, and people are walking by wondering why I've got my full camera set up. And that's where we're coming to you today from. So, it's always a new adventure. But with that out of the way, we've got a big docket to get to. Brad, you're going to be kicking us off, I believe, talking about a pretty exciting update that finally shipped this week.
Yeah, and I've now lost track of what podcast we've talked about this on, what we've shared in the past. But really fun to come back from vacation and to see that one of the first things we're finally shipping is the ability to have activities on an itinerary that don't have a specific time associated with them. And this has been, I think, since like I started at Tern, something that we've all been like, oh, this is kind of weird, right? But like people can figure it out. You just pick a time. No, there's just things you want to put an itinerary.
You're going hiking at exactly 12 a.m. UTC, right? I mean, like that's what we're always hiking at that time.
Yeah,
right?
Here are your dinner options. And no matter where you go, you have to go at 6 p.m. because that's what I said. Or like we have heard real feedback from people where they kind of forget that if they don't put a time in, it defaults to midnight, and so their clients are like, wait, why is this happening at midnight? Why did you book this? And there's just a lot of confusion there. So really excited to share that this is now live. I know it sounds like maybe very boring or just like you can now have a thing without a date and time, but like it took a lot of lift from the team to make this happen. And we can just show a quick demo of what this looks like now. So if you have a trip today in Tern and you say you add an activity in, I added it on that January 8th date, but you can see here, the only thing we automatically set for you now is a date. And so the start time and end time is completely empty, and you can leave it that way. And if you go to your itinerary for your client and look at this activity, you can see that it just has a date here. There's no time scheduled yet. And this is the basics. That's kind of how it works now throughout Tern on any item on an activity or an itinerary. You can set it without the time, and then you could later go in and add a time and say, okay, this is actually at 5 o'clock, and that will just work, and that'll show up everywhere that we show the times. And then similarly, if for some reason you need to remove a time, say on your current trips where things like midnight are still hanging out on there, you can just do that. You're not going to get hit with a bunch of weird errors or anything. We've handled all that. So now those things are separate, and you can do both.
Just one quick call out, because I did see a few people who were confused. You do have to, as Brad demoed, delete each part of it right now. So you have to delete like the hour, the minute, and the AM or PM. Otherwise, you will see, like maybe just delete one. You'll see that. So we got a little bit of confusion. We'll definitely want to improve this. But if you're running into that, that's why.
Yeah, super good call.
And I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but I just want to again give the engineering team a shout out here. Like Brian, James, but really the whole team is now relearning how dates and times worked in the platform. And Brad, you've got the visual up here with AI assist. This is one of the ones, as people know, I love to geek out about kind of AI. We fine-tuned our model, right? We're the only platform out there that has not just AI, but a custom model that's been fine-tuned for this. Well, we taught that model that every time you give back a day, a date, it has to have a time associated with it, right? So literally we're having to rethink how does the fine-tuning of our AI interact with our new date time structure, right? And how do you manage that? So the number of edge cases here and the number of kind of things that made this just kind of work is unfathomable. And it's why we put it off for so long. But we bit the bullet, we did it. And I think it's also pretty cool that we've seen basically no disruption from this fundamental re-architecture of date and times, which are pretty fundamental to the platform, right?
Yeah, casual, just the time everything actually happens. So I want to make sure none of that gets messed up.
It turns out that matters in travel, right? So that was so exciting to get out, and I think it's just going to be such a refreshing change of pace just from how everything looks. But we also got a couple other things out. Molly, do you want to give a quick? Speaking of, I don't know, I'm just going to make a fantasy joke, but I can't. It's like dragons that we're trying to slay or something, and I actually realize I know nothing about fantasy. So maybe you could take it over and talk about the dragon that we're trying to slay that is Nihilus upgrade.
It wasn't too bad until you said it twice.
Oh, I'm so excited about Molly's eventual novel where Nihilus is the name of the dragon. This is going to be great.
Oh my God, amazing idea. Wow. I dabble in writing fantasy, if people are wondering, and I'm obsessed with that idea. So not to rabbit hole on Nihilus, because I think we got a little we vented a little last week on the podcast. So I'm just going to touch on it very briefly. We are almost at the finish line. We basically have every account migrated over to the new system, except a handful that are in a weird state that we're working individually with those folks. So I think next week will be the last week we have to really talk about this from like a project perspective. We'll always be kind of improving our email integration. So not saying that won't be a thing that we continue to do, but from a migration standpoint, we should be at the finish line, which is really exciting. And just another.
We can actually focus on improving and not just moving, right?
Exactly. So that's amazing. And then we also shipped a really fun quick win this week, which allows agency administrators or really anyone actually who has contacts that are shared with them. So for example, we auto share all contacts with your agency across your agents when they're creating those new contacts, or if they bulk share all of their historical contacts with you. So in the shared with me tab, you'll see all of those contacts. You can now export those contacts right from there. And that allows you to, for example, we hear a lot every week or every month, you want to export all the contacts into your marketing system to make sure it's constantly up to date there. Or you just want kind of a backup record in whatever system you want to use that. So you can now do that right from the shared with me tab. You can export contacts anytime.
So cool. All right. So we've had a busy week, and there's also all these things that are happening behind the scenes, just to tease people a little bit, that are really exciting, but we don't get to talk about them this week. So we're going to talk about them in coming weeks. So stay tuned. But there's a bunch of stuff that we can talk about that we're working on, and we've got a big webinar next week. We've got lots of things we're going to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is the Users Conference, which we are officially opening up registrations for on Monday. So March 3rd, we are going to be opening up the registrations. You will, if you've registered for the waitlist, you'll get an email inviting you to register. We will be going to the waitlist first before we send out a kind of broad email, because we, if you look at the waitlist, have already kind of oversold. We haven't sold any, but we have overcapacity interest on the waitlist. So if you're on the waitlist, you'll get an email to register. Definitely recommend taking advantage of that as quickly as you can. You'll need to put down a deposit for half the amount of the cabin, and then you'll have until the end of April to pay the second half. That also means if you have a roommate that you're splitting costs with, just like you can do for your clients, you can have one person pay the deposit, one person pay the kind of final balance. That will basically split the cost. So you're going to have some options to do that, which is different than what we put in the wait list, where we said you had to pay the full balance up front. We were able to make it work with the deposit. So we're excited about that, giving people a little bit more flexibility on how they spread the costs out over time. So stay tuned for that. The last thing I wanted to say, I actually got, there's a Facebook post, I think it was early this week or maybe over the weekend, where somebody kind of asked hey, this is quite the investment. And I just want to make sure this isn't basically a vacation. Right. Some conferences feel more like vacation than they feel like a learning experience. And they're I can go anywhere that I want on vacation. But if I'm signing up for this conference, I want to know that it's actually going to help move my business forward. And so one of the things I shared in the comments, and that I thought it may be worth talking about here, is we do not think about this as a vacation. We think about this as our ambition is to make this the highest impact conference that you can attend this year for your business. And the whole reason that we decided to do this in the first place is we attend so many conferences every year. In March alone, between Katie and myself, I think we'll be at 5 different conferences and kind of events. And they're all good. But what we felt that was missing was it can be really hard to actually implement things in your business when it's all high level, right? You go to a session and it's like, here's how to implement a sales pipeline, but you're like, okay, cool. Like I'm using Tern as my CRM. Like what does a sales pipeline look like in Tern, right? Like how do I actually build that? But because these trade shows have to account for the fact that people are using all these different platforms, they can't go into that implementation layer, right? And so you're sort of left to figure it out. And so our vision for this conference is like, you've got theory, you've got best practices, but then you can also start to immediately workshop that into like, how do you do that in Tern, right? How do you actually build that in Tern, right? And how do you walk away with not only learning something, but the systems and processes that you need to do that? And so we made the decision to charge more for this event and not have a bunch of sponsors, because sponsors want stage time, right? They want people in a room that they get to talk to. And that's great, but there's a million places that you can go and hear Royal Caribbean talk about their new ships, right? We didn't want to have to give up a bunch of our time to let Royal Caribbean talk about their new ships. We wanted, and like, it's great, no harm there, but like, we want to use that time to actually move your business forward. And so I've told the team, like, expect to hopefully have way more fun than an average week at Tern, and we have a lot of fun, but like also work harder, right? This is not a vacation. Like this is a users conference where we'll be showing up, we'll be meeting with people, we'll be doing presentations, we'll be leading workshops. Like it's going to be really fun, but it is not a vacation. So wanted to just talk about that in case you were curious or you hear people asking, like that is the expectation that we're setting. We know we have a lot of work. We know we're making a big investment. We do not take that lightly. Brad, Molly, anything you want to add on the users conference now that I finished my monologue on it?
I mean, we'll both be there. And if you want to share all your product feedback with us too, feel free to corner us by the pool.
Yeah, that's also product feedback, but by pool, right?
Yeah.
Cruise is also over a weekend, right? So like maybe I get a vacation when we get back. Like, is there? I don't know. I don't normally work weekends, David, but I can do it for the users.
Brad, I've seen how many messages you respond to on the weekends. Like I know that you work the weekends sometimes. But yeah, no. I mean, we'll figure. It's going to be fun. Like I'm really excited about it. And like, yeah, I was talking to the one of the leads at the Bermuda tourism department. They're like thinking about how they can actually craft some really cool experiences, so that part of the work element. I'd say 90% of it we think about is like moving your business forward by combining theory and Tern. And then there's 10% of it, which is like getting content and experience on Virgin's newest ship will literally be the second sailing ever on there. So like getting the content, sharing your experiences to hopefully sell some of these cruises. I think this is the first ship that Virgin has that will be able to go through the Panama Canal. So they'll have a whole new set of itineraries in Alaska on the West Coast on this ship. So if you're an advisor, like that's a pretty cool opportunity to start to sell those itineraries. And then of course, Bermuda. Like I was talking to the Bermuda tourism department, they kind of framed this as like, people don't think about Bermuda, but it's a lot of the same experiences as like a Maldives or some of these other kind of much harder to get to places. But it's like tropical island. It's like, more expensive, right? But it's going to have this like, kind of British feel to it. So I think it'll be really cool from that perspective and just learning the destination. So hopefully it's a win-win. Registration opens at around, I think 12:30 Eastern is when those emails are supposed to be going out on Monday. And we hope to see you all there. It's going to be really fun. With that, let's transition over back to the product. And we're going to talk about some features that we're going to be covering. We'll talk about the webinar here in a minute, but we'll cover all these in detail in the webinar. But Molly, talk to us about payout statements.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to go off script for just a second because I forgot to mention this when we were putting together the agenda. But just in terms of like what's coming up next week, we will be starting development for a few features that people are going to be super excited about. I was just in the Facebook post yesterday about one of them. So we're going to be working on a set of forms improvements that will be really cool, giving you more control over required versus optional fields within certain form elements. Also being able to collect more contact information from travelers in the trip request form, which we know will be huge, and then giving you more control over the responder form element and the cover page. So things that I think will be incredibly hype with anybody listening. So that's going to be starting development next week. So we've been doing some planning for that this week. I think that's going to be a huge one. Go ahead.
Maybe just plus to that, because it was funny. We're prepping all this users conference stuff, right? And it's like Jade sends me a message. I think it was like on Monday this week. She's like, "Is there a good way that we can collect this like contact data that we need to make the booking when people are filling out the trip request form?" And I just laughed and I was like, "This is why dog fooding your product, which we've talked about before, is like so powerful." I'm like, "Not yet, but in 2 weeks, maybe."
Yeah, exactly. And then the other thing that we're going to be making a lot easier is transferring the owner of a contact. So if you're using contact collaboration, being able to change the owner of a contact, and also at the agency level, upload agency contacts and assign out owners just through our contact import. So those will be huge ones that are starting development next week. So plug for those. We'll be talking about more in the coming podcasts. And then, payout statements, your original ask. So this should be launching next week. We'll be talking about it in the webinar and doing a whole demo of it. But this really allows you to take kind of all of the upcoming payouts that are due to your agents and consolidate them per agent into more of like a payout statement for that pay period, which was kind of the last missing piece to make the whole process of logging commission and adding adjustments and then paying your agents super seamless. So we'll be doing more of an in-depth demo and talking about it more in both the webinar and the next podcast. But that'll just be a huge one for the end-to-end loop of paying out your agents. And of course, your agents will be able to see their upcoming statements as well.
So excited for that. That's going to be really cool. And it's also just fun. I was like, should I talk about this? But like, you talk to some of these like big partners, and it's like, or kind of agencies, right? And they're like, well, like this is a really important feature for us, right? Like, and it's hard for us to think about moving our back office until we have this. And like, our previous platform, it took like a year and a half for them to build this, and we're like 8 days shipping it. Like, it's just fun. Like, I just love those moments, right? Where it's just like, you talk to somebody, and like literally a couple weeks later, like, yep, here it is. Like, what else do you need, right? So it's going to be fun to ship that. And speaking of other things that people have asked us for, that maybe is actually a little bit more complicated because there's like a data problem here. But Brad, you want to talk about preferred suppliers?
Yeah. David, you can't have both ways. Say things are incredibly hard, and also it only takes us 8 days to do them. You gotta. It took us way more than 8 days. We've been thinking about it for a year, but we built it.
That's true. It's all the thought. That's a good point. Brad and Molly do like so much work up front, and then like the engineering team just can crank through it, right? So you do have to have both, right? Like you've got to have the like pre-planning and the thoughts. And I know that each feature that we build, you all spend 1 year thinking about. So
Okay. So the other thing actually that should help a lot with reconciling commission and reporting is we're going to be allowing agencies to have control over their list of suppliers for their agency. So today we know people are running into problems where your agents are picking different versions of the same supplier, and your reporting gets all messy. When you're doing reconciliation, you don't know like what to search for when you're looking for a booking. It's like, ooh, is it Disney Cruises? Is it Disney's other thing? And so we're going to be making a way for you to just have your kind of golden source of truth list of suppliers that all of your agents will choose from. And there'll be a way in there also for you to put any notes about those suppliers that are relevant for your agent. So if you have details like a specific contact at that supplier that your agents need to reach out to every once in a while, or if there's specific login details for the portal when they go to book through that supplier, you can put those things in Tern, and it'll be hopefully like both really helpful from the reporting aspect for you, and also just another way to bring more information into Tern so they have your agency set up for success with like one place to find all the information they need.
I think this will be such a leap forward. Just like you look at the supplier list, and we've talked about this before, right? And it's like kind of messy today. And so, we have a long-term, like multi-year vision on how that supplier list sort of will evolve, and like why having a community element to it is going to be important. But right now, it's this kind of interesting project of like, how do you add signal? How do you make sure that like the reporting works, that the accounting works, that all these things work, right? And like you kind of have the best of both worlds. So this I'd say be like the first big step in the evolution of suppliers over time, but it will not be the only step, right? There will be more. So it's really exciting to kind of get that out. We're going to be talking about all of this on Thursday of next week. It's been a while since we've done a product launch webinar, and we are going to be doing a agency-focused one on Thursday, which is March. Anyone know off the top of their head? Frantically pulls up calendar.
March 6th.
March 6th, yes. Thank you, Brad. March 6th at, I believe it's 12 p.m. Eastern time. We will be launching this, and it'll be a really fun kind of agency webinars. So you can find that under, maybe I'll just do a quick kind of screen share and plug a couple kind of things here. So one, if I share my screen, I'll see if this actually works. No, it's not going to work because I just downloaded the new app. Okay, failed screen share attempt. So if you go to our website, under resources, you'll which is just Tern.travel, you'll see an events and webinars tab. And so that's where you'll find the featured event is the agency owner product launch. So you can register for that on March 6th. But you'll also find other happy hours that we're doing there. So we're doing the Astor River Cruise Expo. We're doing a Las Vegas Travel Agent Forum thing. So you'll find all of our events on that page. So again, maybe we can link that in the show notes, which is just Tern.travel/events. And that's where you'll find the details. But this is a really cool opportunity just to sort of see, honestly, if you're an advisor or if you're an agency owner, I think this is going to be a cool webinar to attend, because what we're going to do is we're going to continue our theme of the end-to-end flow, but we're actually going to add a layer to it, right? So if you've been to one of our webinars before, we've done lots of these kind of end-to-end flows, whether it's like planning a trip and sharing with your clients and going through credit card authorization, or you kind of doing these other pieces. We'll do an abbreviated version of that. But then what we'll show is like, okay, if you're a frequent Flight Path listener, you would have seen, we kind of actually talked through the deck a couple weeks ago, right? That we like talk with agency owners, right? We talk about how fragmented the tech landscape is. And at the advisor level, that means itineraries, CRMs, financial tools. Then you have a whole nother set of tools at the agency owner level. And the vision for Tern is that there's actually just one platform that seamlessly connects advisors, agencies, host agencies in a single ecosystem. And this will be the first webinar where we actually demo that end-to-end flow across two major levels of the stack, with a level of depth that really demonstrates that, like, if you're an agency owner, you can run your business on Tern. If you're an advisor, you can run your business on Tern. And so we'll be demoing things like the kind of supplier statement management, the agent payouts, like how you can actually start to set up commission rules, how you can actually start to mark your preferred suppliers. Like, there's that level. But more importantly than just having those features is how does they integrate with the broader landscape. So this is a plug. Whether you're an advisor, definitely register and check it out. Like, I think you'll find it interesting. Just know that a lot of this will be kind of agency owner context. If you're an agency owner listening to this, like, you will not want to miss this webinar. This is going to be, I think, a watershed moment in a lot of ways of like how different Tern is from anything else on the market. And if you're an advisor and you're hosted, make sure that your agency owner is going to be at this webinar, because the long-term vision is that you don't have to do sales reports anymore, that you can just use Tern and all that data is available to get you paid more reliably and faster because your agency owner is also using Tern. So send them a link to that. Again, just Tern.travel/events. It's going to be a really, really incredible webinar, and we would love to see you there. Brad, Molly, anything you'd add on why people should attend?
I mean, you get to see Brad present at a webinar, which everyone loves. So that's the real reason.
Brad, are you going to wear the turtleneck? Is it cool enough in Philly for the turtleneck, or what do you think?
You know, you have to attend to find out what the Brad.
There we go. Love it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right. I was just going to wrap up, but any closing thoughts, any good fantasy jokes that we need to make before we conclude here, since that's the theme of the podcast today? No?
You know, I was really trying, again, excuse, I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly dodged a bullet on this one, because if they were both fully rested, I would have just gotten like roasted, I think, right there. But this is great. Both of you need to be tired more often. It's a safer space for me. Thank you for listening to Flight Path. As always, if this has been fun, helpful, we hope it's both. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment. We do read all of those. And we will see you at the webinar next week. We'll see you on Flight Path next Friday. And we will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.